individuals who made the changes. If we look at the agenda moving forward, it seems to me that there have been a number of cul-de-sacs. Ecotourism was a cul-de-sac. It was a terrible, in my view, mistake. It caused a lot of focus on a segment, a fragment of the tourism sector. I think Ian and I share that agenda. It was extremely convenient for the mainstream to be able to say that's what they do over there. But what was worse about ecotourism was that it created the myth that tourists would pay more for this. And I don't believe that that's true. I don't believe that tourists will pay more for a responsible tourism thing. No more than they want to pay more for a fairly traded banana or a farm-approved egg. They simply want the producer to deal with that part of the agenda for them and to remain competitive on price. And that's the reality of the market system in which we operate. The responsible sustainability bit is a part of the total agenda. And that's really been the responsibility agenda from the beginning. Tourists don't want to pay more for an experience because it's safe. They expect it to be safe. They want to pay more for it because there's a fire escape in the hotel. They expect the fire escape in the hotel to be there. And we need to face up to that and address it. We need to stop pretending, I think, that there is any premium in the price. I don't think that's true. Carbon offsetting is again a big mistake. Carbon offsetting just says carry on as before, pay your medieval pardon, pay your fine, and it's okay. And the byway is green. Green is a byway. It niches in somewhere where we can't afford to put it. We have to address development. We have to take the twin themes of the original Rio conference, the summit, and do environment and development. We cannot just deal with one. The other problem, I think, is the endless time that's been spent over the last 10 years particularly, making longer and longer lists. We really finished with that when the 2004 report that Eugenio talks about was completed. That was the report which defined the kinds of indicators which needed to be addressed in sustainable development. That work's been done. It was concluded in 2004. Since then, we've had a whole lot of people creating new lists, making long lists. Everybody wants their thing in the list. That's what killed ecotourism. Everybody wants their agenda put into the list. But the problem with that is you end up not doing the action. You focus rather more on the list. Move on to the next slide. Next slide. Thanks. This I put up because it was a landmark moment in 2000 when 150 tour operators in the UK accepted that as tour operators they have the potential to do both harm and good in destinations, and this was the bit I didn't think they'd sign up to, but they did, to acknowledge that in the past the harm had too often outweighed the good. Now we need people to face up to that before we can get them to change. People have to recognise that this is a problem before we can move on. Just very quickly, most of you will be familiar with this. It's about minimising negative impacts. It's about creating local economic benefit. It's about involving local people in decision making, and that's the toughest part of this agenda. It's also about putting a contribution back. It's about tourists putting something back into destinations. It's about giving tourists enjoyable and meaningful connections of the sort that those who did the city tour yesterday had. Because that's what makes people want to come back and recommend it to their friends. It's about providing access for all to tourism, and it's about being culturally sensitive and travelling with respect. I wanted just to use, I suspect it's Eugenio's generic definition of sustainable tourism. It's certainly in the publication that we've been talking about. Now what's important about this is, again, the three pillars of sustainability: optimal use, respect, socio-economic benefits. But it's the next slide that's the real giveaway. And that is that it has to be a continuous process, that there has to be informed participation by all the stakeholders. And this, I think, Eugenio, is your point about the whole of government approach. This can never just be done by Ministry of Tourism. It requires these key individuals who are going to provide strong political leadership, whether they're in government or inside a company. It needs to be somebody with the vision and the persistence and the drive to keep it moving forward, because without that, it comes to nothing. And it has to provide a high level of tourist satisfaction. If you don't do that, the tourists won't come back, and it doesn't work. The tourists have to come back. The union will recognise this graphic, as will anybody else who was at Cape Town. This was carefully negotiated with you and WTO to make clear that actually the change that we were talking about is a small change. The principle of sustainability is in the global code of ethics of you and WTO. Economic, social and environmental is there. All we're responsible at is this notion that people take responsibility and do something about it, rather than point to others to do it. Because what I was hearing was companies saying government should do that, government saying companies should do that, NGOs saying anybody else but them should do that. And you can't make any progress like that. The only way we make progress is by people accepting their personal responsibility to make a change, and accepting the principle that you can't outsource that. It's your responsibility. You cannot point to others and demand that they do it. And the problem, of course, with that is that if it's nobody's responsibility, then it's a risk that nobody can do it. Responsible tourism is very broad. It's a very broad range of individuals moving at different speeds, one general direction perhaps, but using a variety of approaches. It's fundamentally based, I think, in the UNWTO's global code of ethics, which does use the word responsibility quite a lot, and obviously in the Cape Town Declaration. It's about making change. It's about moving from A to B. It's about accepting that the solutions will be diverse, but there's no one solution fits all. And it means different things in different destinations and to different consumer groups. I think we're very clear about the importance of that. I was asked to say something about the difference between sustainable and responsible. They're not the same thing. The difference is, fundamentally, that responsible tourism is about taking responsibility and doing something about it. It's very simple. We don't need to get complicated about what responsible tourism is. I tell my students that responsibility is free. You can have as much of it as you can have. It's one of the few things that's available to you for free. There may be a cost in taking it, but you can have it for free. It simply means to respond to the challenge. It has positive and negative connotations. It doesn't work well in French. The word responsable in French is about name pointing and blame calling. It doesn't work well. It works in some languages, it doesn't work in all. But it is the positive sense of responsibility that I'm emphasising. It's that sense of, I made a difference, I feel good about that, I've done something good to make the world a better place. The business case for responsible tourism, which I'm not going to go through, is not singular. It is plural. There are lots of different business cases, different parts of these arguments apply in different places. Sorry, can we go to the next bit? It's about, sorry, let's go on forward. And again, and again. Different parts of this will apply to different people. And obviously the marketing manager of a company is much more interested in the differentiation of the PR value. The CEO is often interested in minimising risk. Some managers are often very concerned about license to operate the way it's on the local community. When I arrived at this university today, one of the managers of the university said to me, we have a very good relationship with the local community. It's very interesting, one of the first things that he said to me, you'll be perfectly safe here. We have a good working relationship with our community. It's a fundamental part of good business. Just go on quickly, this is the actor, affectionately known as the donor. The company come out terribly well on that slide, because they now, as part of their objective as a trade association, talk about creating thriving destinations, about taking responsibility in a finite world, explicitly there, about rewarding jobs. And we are seeing trade associations taking a more aggressive role in this. In terms of a tipping point, I'd say 2006, 2007, we got 1,200 nominations for the Responsible Tourism Awards then. First plagiarism of a responsible tourism policy, it became worthwhile to steal one in 2006, which is one kind of indicator that things are moving on. That was also the year that World Travel Market took on the same 7 principles in Cape Town to define World Responsible Tourism Day. We launched the Responsible Tourism Awards in 2004. Those do demonstrate the amount of change that's happening in the private sector. We have there a lot of different initiatives around the world. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they're there on the website. Responsible tourism is not about long checklists. It is about identifying the economic, social and environmental issues that matter in a particular place. The only global issue is climate change, and that's one of the reasons why we're focusing on that today. Ultimately, it's about taking responsibility. It's about defining priorities which need to be local. It's about issues where tourism can make a difference. There are lots of problems in the world that tourism can't do anything about. So let's focus on the ones that we can. It's about determining who can do something, who can take responsibility. Then it's about applying consequential thinking and realising if you allow consumers just to pay a forfeit for flying, there is no pressure on the industry to improve its performance. That was a mistake because we didn't think through what the consequences were for taking that kind of approach. It's about setting targets and measuring the impact. I couldn't agree with you more, there's far too much talk about outputs, what gets done, rather than what the results of what is done are. It's the impact we want to measure. It doesn't matter how many training days there be, it's what are the impacts of those training days. That's where we need to force NGOs and international governmental organisations to be held accountable. Not a problem in the private sector. In the private sector, they don't care about the outputs, they care about the impacts. And that's why I enjoy working in the private sector. It can, of course, be undermined by others, by the freeloaders, and that does mean that we're going to have to see more government regulation in this area. I have no doubt about that. The big change in the next 10 years will be more regulation. The drivers of change, consumer demand for richer engagement brings a need to get closer to communities. That enhances responsibility. There are broader consumer trends in the originating markets towards more responsible consumerism. Tourism will be part of that. Everybody wants kids-free holidays. Nobody wants a holiday. Very few people want a holiday. They feel guilty about afterwards. We are seeing changes in the investment climate. There are demands from those in the industry. We'll see legislation and regulation. And we'll also see more and more demand in the destination to make it happen. Now, this research, which I'm only going to show you very briefly, because I'm told by Xavier I'm running out of time, he wants me to stop. Sorry, can you move on? Next one. Next one. Next one. This is really interesting. This is the only comparative research we have internationally that shows the propensity of consumers from different destinations, all Canadian source markets, to comply with what's at the top. Britain is at the bottom of that. Now, if we've managed to make something of responsible tourism in the UK, what have they been doing in Mexico, China, Korea, France, Germany, Japan, the USA, Canada and Australia? They haven't been focusing on changing consumer demand, and that, in my view, is what they should do. We're seeing a massive increase in the demand for experiential tourism, certainly in the UK and in other originating markets. The thing about experiential tourism is that, if you create memories, you create viral marketing. It actually feeds back into competitors. If you can make good experiences for people, experiences they feel good about, you get that positive feedback mechanism into viral marketing, which Xavier will talk about later in the conference. The main challenges, and I'll conclude with this, are really to change originating marketing, to get governments in destinations to realise that they can take control of tourism and use it rather than forever dancing to the tune of the developers. We need to challenge greenwashing whenever we see it. We need to demand transparency and accountability. We have to go beyond the labelling. We have to be able to believe that the company is making a difference. They need to be able to show us that they are. We need to be able to taste the difference. We need to address aviation, and we need to address child protection. And I've no doubt that other issues will come up. We also need to focus on the global issues, but at the local level. We can have long lists of global issues. What matters are addressing the 5 or 6 things which matter in a particular local destination. We need to challenge that kind of behaviour, for example, with tourists clambering all over Central 1. I'm going to leave it there. There are a few slides at the end which gives you some other links, but that is the point I wanted to end with. We must now begin publicly to challenge irresponsible tourism. Thank you very much.